I am Claire White. I have worked for RMA for over 20 years. I've worked with the nursery program for nearly my entire career here at RMA. We'll begin with an overview of NVS. Thanks to a recent expansion, NVS is available in all states and counties, beginning with the 2025 crop year. Due to unexpected news we received at the end of the 2023 calendar year, we learned that the nursery field grown and container program would be discontinued as of May 31st, 2025. NVS offers a simple enrollment and loss adjustment process in the nursery crop insurance program. It eliminates the need for the eligible plant list and plant price schedule and associated software packages, which were necessary in the administration of the nursery FG&C program. NVS includes an occurrence loss option, which changes the deductible applied at a unit level to a copay applied to each damaged plant for an additional premium. It also offers a new peak endorsement pilot, which allows you to increase your coverage during a specific period of time during the crop year. If you're familiar with the nursery FG&C program, you'll notice as we move through the presentation some similarities between NVS and nursery FG&C. But there are differences in NVS that we developed to offer a simpler program that you can more tailor to your risk management needs. NVS allows you to select the dollar amount of coverage that best fits your operation. You may tailor your coverage by individual practice, container, or field grown. And for additional levels of coverage, you may choose to insure any of the 10 plant categories under each insured practice. NVS simplifies the loss adjustment process. It offers a more accurate approach to determine plant values by relying on your actual sales receipts. It also increases your participation by allowing you to assist the loss adjuster in determining if a damaged plant can be marketed or rehabilitated. And it establishes program dates that are better suited to the agronomic and nursery management practices in different regions across the country. The NVS amount of insurance is based on the value selected by you, not to exceed the highest declared monthly inventory value. We call this the selected value. In comparison, nursery FG&C amount of insurance and loss were based on the lesser of the EPL, PPS, or catalog price. NVS determines the value for loss, or what we call the approved sales value, based on, in order of precedence, prior sales, contract prices, or discounted catalog price. We focused on valuing your inventory using your sales records and contract prices because these prices are reflective of the prices you receive for your plants. Whereas the insurable prices provided in the EPL PPS under nursery FG&C were nationwide based prices and not necessarily reflective of your plant prices. And NVS requires determinations of those individual plant values only when there is a loss. NVS is a multi-peril dollar plan of insurance. It offers basic units by field grown or container grown practice, and those units may be further divided by plant category within the insured practice or non-contiguous land for the field grown practice only. It's an inventory-based loss, 12-month insurance period, and depending on your location, the insurance period runs June 1 to May 31st or October 1 through September 30th. A June 1 through May 31st insurance period is for those states along the Gulf Coast and East Coast, including Pennsylvania, Vermont, and West Virginia, and the other set of dates is for all other states. Again, it offers a occurrence loss option and a peak endorsement pilot. Much like Nursery, FG&C, NVS protects against adverse weather, fire, wildlife, earthquake, volcanic eruption, and the following causes of loss if due to one of those previously mentioned causes of loss. So a loss in plant value because the plants are dead or zero market value. And the example here is poinsettias that miss their marketing window. If they miss their marketing window due to an insured cause of loss, such as adverse weather conditions, then that would be an insurable cause of loss. Failure of the irrigation water supply and failure of or reduction in the power supply. Coverage may be available for the following: insect or disease damage, if no effective control measure exists or if it's allowed by the special provisions for your county. Cold temperatures, with a caveat that the adequate facilities or equipment have been installed and there is a breakdown or failure that cannot be fixed before an insured cause of loss occurred, or the coldest temperature exceeded the designed capacity of the facilities or equipment. And damage to plants caused by collapse of buildings or structures only if an insured cause of loss was the cause of the collapse. NVS does not cover the inability to market the plants due solely to refusal of a buyer to accept production, boycott, or quarantine, failure of the plants to grow to an expected size, or failure to follow good nursery practices. What are the insurability requirements? The first requirement is to determine if you are a wholesale nursery. A wholesale nursery for insurance purposes means you derive at least 40% of your gross income from wholesale marketing of plants. This is determined by dividing the dollar value of wholesale plant sales by the sum of both retail and wholesale plant sales. The denominator does not include revenue from sales such as landscaping, chemical or other nursery-related products, production of other crops or livestock, or from any business unrelated to nursery. So here's a basic example. You have $150,000 in retail plant sales, $300,000 in wholesale plant sales, and $75,000 in nursery-related product sales. To determine if you meet the eligibility requirement, we're only going to look at the retail and wholesale plant sales. So we take 300,000 divided by the sum of retail and wholesale plant sales, and we get that 2/3 of your sales were devoted to wholesale marketing. So you qualify as a wholesale nursery. Other requirements for insurability include selling to retailers who resell to end users, landscape contractors, government entities or organizations, and commercial fruit producers. You must have a share in the nursery, submit required documentation that's accepted by your insurance provider, grow plants in a nursery determined by the insurance provider to be acceptable, irrigate plants unless otherwise provided by the special provisions for your county, grow plants in an appropriate medium, grow and sell plants with the root system attached, and grow plants that may produce edible fruits or nuts, provided the plants are made available for sale. Harvest of the fruit or nuts does not affect insurability. And for the field grown practice, you grow plants that are adapted to the applicable USDA plant hardiness zone map hardiness zone. Plants that are not insurable are those grown solely as stock plants or being grown solely for harvest of buds, flowers, or greenery. damaged in a prior crop year unless those plants have been rehabilitated and are offered for sale at the approved sales value at the beginning of the crop year. Classified by a state or county as illegal to grow or sell, and produced in nursery containers that contain 2 or more different genera, species, subspecies, varieties, or cultivars. Here are the important program dates. We have 2 sets. The first set is for the Atlantic Coast states and Gulf Coast states, and the other set is for all other states. The dates for the Atlantic Coast states and Gulf Coast states aligns with the program dates that we have for, or we had for Nursery FG&C. And then the all other states were established based on feedback we received from producers. The concern was that the Nursery FG&C program dates were tailored to Florida and the hurricane season. The May 1 sales closing date didn't work well for producers in other areas of the country. So to accommodate these concerns, we established that September 1 sales closing date with an October 1 through 9/30 crop year. So the important dates are the sales closing date. This is the date by which you'll want to submit your application or your renewal documents if you want to ensure there's no lapse in coverage from the previous year. So if you submit your documentation, let's say on May 1st, then insurance is going to attach after a 30-day wait. It'll attach on June 1. If you were to miss that sales closing date and you submitted your documentation, let's say in June, that's okay. You'll just have to wait the 30 days for insurance to attach, and then insurance attaches, say, let's say it's June or July 10th, and then you'll have insurance until the end of the crop year, May 31st. The contract change date is a date that's important to RMA. This is a date that we have to get all changes to our programs out to you all so you are aware of them before the sales closing date. Coverage ends on May 31st or September 30th, depending on where you are. And then the cancellation termination date is also the same as the last day of the insurance period. For those of you who are in a county with a May 1st sales closing date, the 2026 crop year began on June 1. You may purchase prorated NVS coverage for 2026. You can submit your documentation at any time, and coverage will attach 30 days after your company receives all the documentation. And then coverage will end on May 31st, 2026. For those of you who have a September 1st sales closing date, you may still purchase prorated NVS coverage for the 2025 crop year. That crop year ends September 30th, so you would need to get your documentation in as soon as possible. Coverage would attach 30 days after, and then you would basically just have to pay premium for the month of September. You may purchase NVS coverage for the 2026 crop year by submitting your documentation by September 1st, sales closing date. Coverage then would attach October 1st and then end next September 30th. So what do you need to submit if you would like coverage? The first thing is an application. The second is a nursery value report for each insured practice. This report represents your declaration of the insurance choices you elect. The NVR is synonymous with the plant inventory value report under Nursery FG&C. You'll also need to submit a monthly unit value plan, or MUVP, for each insured basic unit. This is a report declaring your maximum inventory value by month throughout the crop year for each plant category. And I will have a basic example of this on a later slide. And you also need to supply 2 printed copies or 1 electronic copy of your most recent catalog or price list. For insurance to attach on the start date of the crop year, so June 1 or October 1, you must submit all your documentation on or before the sales closing date. If you are applying for or renewing coverage after the sales closing date, insurance does not attach until the 31st day after acceptable documents are received by your insurance company, and premium is owed from the first day of the month insurance attaches. Do you have to insure all your plants? The short answer is no. You may elect to insure your field-grown practice, your container-grown practice, or both. For additional levels of coverage only, you may choose which plant categories within the insured practice you wish to insure. Once you have selected the plant categories you wish to insure, all plants within those plant categories must be insured. So for example, assume you insure just your field-grown practice and you have an additional level of coverage. Within your field-grown practice, you grow plants that fall under 8 plant categories. You are not required to insure all 8 plant categories. You may choose to only insure 3 or 4 of those plant categories. You must report your plants by plant category on the Nursery Value Report and the Monthly Unit Value Plan. Here is the list of the plant categories. Each of these plant categories contains a list of genera, and those lists are published in the special provisions for your county. Basic units are the only unit structure available, and they consist of all insurable plants in all insured plant categories in each insured practice. But they may be further divided for additional levels of coverage for each plant category you elect to insure or by non-contiguous land for field-grown practice only. If you elect the catastrophic level of coverage, you may not further divide your basic units. An administrative fee is due for each insured plant category if you have an additional level of coverage, and for each insured practice for the CAT level of coverage. Now we'll get into the inner workings of the program. First, we'll discuss how your amount of insurance is calculated. Your amount of insurance is the product of your selected value, coverage level, price selection percentage, and share. The selected value is the value you declare on your NVR. Coverage levels are available from 50 to 75%, and the price selection percentage is set at 100% for additional level of coverage and 55% for CAT level of coverage. And your share is your insurable interest in your nursery at the time insurance attaches. For additional levels of coverage, your selected value is limited to the highest maximum value for the same plant category reported on your MUVP. If you have basic units by share, which means all selected values for all plant categories are summed together, you'll then sum your selected values to the practice level. For CAT level of coverage, your selected value for each insured practice cannot exceed the lesser of 110% of the maximum value for all plant categories in any given month during any of the preceding 3 crop years, or the maximum of the monthly values reported on the MUVP. Here's an amount of insurance example. So here is a little graphic of the MUVP. We're assuming here you have insured one plant category, and you report each month what your maximum inventory value is for that plant category. So it ranges from 600,000 in June to 500,000 in May to 1.1 million in November. So your highest value is 1.1 million, but you don't want to pay premium on $1.1 million all year long. So you select a value less than that. And in this example, you select $900,000. So this is how your amount of insurance is calculated. It is the product of your selected value, coverage level, price selection percentage, and share. So we get $675,000. Now on the loss side of things, we have a few equations. There are three here on this slide. There is a fourth that I will talk about toward the end of this section. The first equation is to determine the percent of loss. Your percent of loss is the post-loss damage value divided by the pre-loss actual unit value. The pre-loss actual unit value is the value immediately prior to the loss event. And this is determined by multiplying the number of each plant by its approved sales value. This term is synonymous with field market value A under nursery FG&C. The post-loss damage value is the total dollar value lost due to an insured cause of loss. And this is basically, this is the pre-loss actual unit value for only those damaged plants. And we multiply those plants by, or the value of those plants by a damage factor, which I will discuss on the next couple of slides. This term is different from field market value B under nursery FG&C in that it's the amount of damage to the plants, whereas field market value B was the value of all plants remaining after the loss event. So for post-loss damage value, we're just looking at the damaged plants. For field market value B, we were looking at the value of all plants. What are the damage factors? So we have two sets of damage factors. One is for liners and annual plants, plant categories, and one is for all other plant categories. For liners and annual plants, the adjuster determines whether the plants are undamaged, which means for the sake of insurance, they have less than 10% damage and are assigned a damage factor of 0%. Or if they're dead, zero market value, which means the plant has zero market value and cannot be marketed. These plants are assigned a damage factor of 100%. Now, the adjuster may put your plants in an undamaged and a dead zero market value category. You might not agree with what the adjuster said. You may move a plant in a sample from dead zero market value to undamaged during the adjustment process, but movement the other direction requires input from a disinterested third party. This table shows the damage factors for all other plant categories. There are three groupings for these plant categories. We have undamaged, which results in less than 10% damage to a plant and has a damage factor of 0. Damaged, which is split into two subgroupings based on the condition of the plant and has a damage factor of 50 or 75%. And dead, zero market value, which encompasses those plants that have been damaged to the extent that the plant has zero market value and cannot be marketed. The damage factor for this grouping is 100%. Again, the adjuster determines which plants fall under which grouping. However, you will work with the adjuster to further divide the damaged grouping into subgroupings, retained damage or discarded damaged. The difference between these two subgroupings is whether the plant will be carried to market. All right, so we've got the percent of loss. Now we can determine the amount of loss. This is determined by taking the lesser of your pre-loss actual unit value or your selected value and multiplying this by the percent of loss. We also need to know the occurrence deductible. The occurrence deductible allows a smaller deductible than the crop year deductible to be used when the pre-loss actual unit value is less than the selected value. The occurrence deductible is the lesser of your deductible percentage, which is 1 minus your coverage level, multiplied by the pre-loss actual unit value, or the crop year deductible, which is the deductible percentage times the selected value. The final equation is indemnity. This one is the one that did not appear on that the first slide. And this is the last step in determining your loss. And this is determined by taking the amount of loss minus the occurrence deductible and multiplying that by your share. Your total indemnities cannot exceed your amount of insurance. Here's an example. So based on our example earlier, we selected a value of $900,000. You have an additional level of coverage and you selected 75%. Your price selection percent is set at 100% and your share is also 100%. Your amount of insurance we determined on a previous slide is $675,000. At time of loss, the loss adjuster determines what was in your nursery prior to the loss. The pre-loss actual unit value was $600,000. And your post-loss damage value was $218,700. Your percent of loss is your pre-loss, your post-loss damage value divided by your pre-loss actual unit value, which is 36.45%. Then we take that times the lesser of the pre-loss actual unit value or the selected value, and we get $218,700. Your occurrence deductible is the lesser of your deductible percentage times pre-loss actual unit value or deductible percentage times your selected value. In this case, the lesser of is the pre-loss actual unit value, so we get $150,000. To determine your indemnity, we subtract the occurrence deductible from the amount of loss and multiply it by your share, and we get $68,700. In this case, your indemnity is less than or equal to that $675,000 amount of insurance. What options and endorsements are available for NVS? We have 3. We have the occurrence loss option, the peak endorsement pilot, and hurricane insurance protection wind index. HIP-WE is available in select states and counties, but the OLO and the peak are available everywhere NVS is available. First is the occurrence loss option. This is a choice available for additional premium, must be elected by the sales closing date. It eliminates the unit deductible. When the percent of loss is equal to or greater than 10%, indemnity may be payable. The premium rate is the same for any coverage level you elect. The change in premium amount is due only to the reduction in amount of insurance. It's not available for CAT level of coverage. So here is an example. We're using the same numbers as we used on the previous example, and we have an amount of insurance of $675,000. Again, loss adjuster determines the pre-loss actual unit value was $600,000 and the post-loss damage value is $218,700. Your percent of loss is 36.45%. This percent is equal to or greater than 10%. So there is an indemnity payable. Once you know the percent of loss, we're going to take that times your coverage level, and we get 0.2734. And your indemnity is that percent multiplied by the lesser of the pre-loss actual unit value or selected value, and you multiply that by your share. So we get $164,040. In this case, indemnity is less than or equal to the $675,000 amount of insurance, So an indemnity is payable. If you recall, without the OLO, the indemnity was $68,000. I'm sorry, $68,700. The peak endorsement pilot is new for the 2026 crop year. It allows producers to increase their selected value for a specific amount of time during the crop year. So as an example, a producer sells poinsettias around Christmas time, and those plants are only in the nursery for a few months. We're assuming here November and December. So the producer could purchase a peak endorsement that is only effective for November and December. And then once it expires at the end of December, the coverage will revert back to the selected value before the peak commencement date. Now, there are two ways a producer can purchase a peak endorsement. They can supply a peak selected value report at the same time they report the nursery value report, and just declare on it what months it should cover. Or they could submit it at least 30 days prior to that peak commencement date. So in this case, if I am in a county with a September 1 sales closing date, I could submit a peak selected value report with my NVR on September 1 and just include on the report that the peak commencement date is November 1st and the peak termination date is December 31st. Or I could submit that peak selected value report on October 1 for it to attach a month later on November 1. There's no premium rate adjustment. Premium increases based on the increased selected value reported on the peak selected value report. Without the peak, you may still increase your selected value during the crop year by submitting a revised NVR, but that increase applies for the remainder of the crop year. The last endorsement is the HIP-WE endorsement. This covers a portion of your deductible, must be elected by the sales closing date. It's available at all levels of coverage, including CAT. HIP-WE and OLO cannot be elected on the same practice. So if you elect HIP-WE on your field grown practice, you cannot also elect the OLO on the field grown practice. HIP-WE and its tropical storm option pay regardless of any loss under NVS. No notice of loss or loss adjustment is required. The full HIP-WE value is paid when your county or an adjacent county experiences sustained winds at least 64 knots or 74 miles an hour from a named cyclone published by NOAA. Half of that HIP-WE value is paid if you have the tropical storm option and your county or adjacent county experiences sustained winds of 34 knots or 39 miles per hour or greater, and average county total rainfall of 5.9 inches or more in a 4-day period. And that 4-day period stretches from the day prior to the storm until 2 days after the storm. The remaining HIP-WE value for the tropical storm option will be paid if there is a subsequent tropical storm or a hurricane. Here is a very basic example of how HIP-WE works. Assume you elected 65% coverage for NVS. Your HIP-WE coverage range would be from 65 to 95%, so 30%. In this example, you have $65 worth of coverage under the base policy and $30 under HIP-WE. If a hurricane triggers under HIP-WE, you'll receive the full $30. If you elected the tropical storm option and a tropical storm is the first event to trigger, you'll receive half of that, $15 for the first occurrence. If a subsequent tropical storm or hurricane occurs, you'll receive the remaining $15. So if NVS is something you'd be interested in and you want to learn more information, you can reach out to a local crop insurance agent. You can go to our homepage, www.rma.usda.gov. In the top right corner of the top banner, you'll see a link that's called Find an Agent. Click on that, and then it takes you to a page where you'll see this, and you'll want to click Find Local Insurance Agents with RMA Agent Locator. I've also included a QR code here. This will take you straight to that agent locator link. And once you click on that QR code or the link that says find local insurance agents, you can filter your search so that it gets you an agent that's close to you. If you'd like to learn more about NVS, you can do that on our website. If you go to our homepage, click in that blue banner, the topic that says About Crop Insurance. That'll bring a drop-down menu, and you can click Highlighted Initiatives and Plans. And once you get to that page, just scroll down to Nursery Value Select. You can also go straight to the NVS landing page by scanning that QR code. And just a reminder, beginning with the 2026 crop year, NVS is the only nursery program available. Nursery FG&C is no longer available. It expired at the end of May. And that concludes the webinar.